Welcome to another episode of the Finding Serenity in the Midst of Chaos podcast. Today, we're talking about how to get unstuck and feel confident again as a working mom with Rebecca Olson. This episode especially relates to you if you are feeling lost or stuck since becoming a mom, if you're questioning whether you want to stay at home as a mom or pull back in your career in order to make it all work, or if you're suffering with imposter syndrome since becoming a mom and want to rebuild your confidence both at work and at home. You'd love to stay at the end because by the end of this episode, you will understand why stuckness and imposter syndrome happens for most working moms. You'll gain an understanding of how to get unstuck and rebuild your confidence. And you'll learn the 3 tools for developing your internal compass so you can get unstuck and start feeling like an amazing working mom again. So stay tuned. Hello, Rebecca. This is our guest today, Rebecca Olson. Hi.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, welcome to the podcast. Rebecca, first of all, tell our listeners who you are, what you do, and who you help.
Yeah, so my name is Rebecca Olson, and I am a life coach for career-driven women that are looking to maintain their career goals, keep kind of moving up in the trajectory of their career, but without sacrificing their family and the time with their family and the motherhood experience that they want.
Yeah, and how did you come to do this in the first
Oh my
place?
goodness. So that really launches me into all that we're going to talk about here today because really I 10 years ago when I was pregnant with my daughter, I went through sort of a crisis moment. And now I call it the motherhood identity crisis. And I know we're going to talk a bit more about that here today, but it was all this internal questioning that went on, who am I? What do I want? What's going on? Do I want even what I'm doing right now? Do I want to keep doing this? And it was very, very confusing during that time. And, long story short, that kind of led me to coaching. Somebody suggested I would make a great coach, and I ended up hiring a coach and then deciding to kind of dip my toes into it and get certified. And here I am today. And I just knew that I wanted to help other women that were experiencing the same thing that I was experiencing with my daughter. And I wanted to make sure that women didn't feel like they had to choose between their career and their family. Like they could have both. It's important to have both if that's what you want.
Yeah, I mean, all of what you just said resonates so much, and I've gone through the exact same thing, and I have many clients who do go through the same thing. So,
Yeah.
just what is motherhood identity crisis, as you mentioned, and why does it happen to so many women?
Yeah, so I classify the motherhood identity crisis as this sort of like midlife crisis, if people want to, call it that. We all kind of understand what that is. It's like you get
Mm.
midlife and you go, "Oh my gosh, half of my life is away. What do I want to do with the rest of my life?" And I think there's a version of that happens when we become moms. And I almost haven't met a mom that hasn't gone through something along this lines where they kind of step back and they kind of are reassessing life and kind of thinking, is this what's my life all about? Is am I doing the things that are important to me? Is what I'm doing, particularly in my job and my career, is it worth my time? And because ultimately
Mm.
we're away from our kids
Yeah.
to go do this job, right? Like, is this even worth it to me? And so and for a lot of women, it's not as if they actually want to change what they're doing. For a portion of them they do. It's this pullback moment where we start questioning everything, right? It becomes
Mm.
this snowball effect that ultimately happens for a lot of us.
Yeah, I guess for kind of women that you're talking about, and I was one of them once upon a time, it's our life so far had become our career, our achievements, and
Exactly.
what we do, our job title, and all of a sudden we are none of that. We are just a mom, not just,
Right.
I don't mean it just a
Yeah.
mom, of
No,
course.
no, it feels that way. It feels
Yeah,
that
it
way. And
feels.
particularly because motherhood is kind of a slower experience,
Mm.
particularly in the beginning when you have this literally a tiny human that only eats and sleeps, and the rhythms are so kind of boring
Yeah.
in comparison to what we do in our jobs, right? It's a very different pace than usually our career is, and that is super jarring for women that have kind of been all in, and a lot of their identity has been found in their job and they've had a lot of success in it. There's a that shift of energy is really confusing. It's like you start to question everything. Question, am I doing things right? Is this supposed to be how it feels? Like none of it feels clear to us at that time, right? And then we
Yeah.
have all of this sort of self-doubt that starts to creep in because of it.
Yes, exactly. And then you start getting used to that, and you start going back into the time you're going back to work, and then yet another confusion. Do I really want to leave my baby? What am I going to do with my life? Can I really keep up with both? Exactly as you were saying. And yes, and this is going to
Yeah.
be an exciting conversation. So, but what was
Yeah.
your specific experience with the motherhood identity crisis, and how did you get yourself out of it?
Well, I talked about how I led into it, right? In terms of becoming a mom. And then I did hire a coach for a short period of time just to get my feet wet and start to understand what this whole coaching thing was. But to be honest, it was really I struggled through it for about a year of asking myself lots of big questions and feeling very lost in how to answer it, right? These are internal conversations, right? And there's no right or wrong to any of the answers to these questions. It's just kind of having to get in touch with what do I want? And that
Mm.
for a lot of people can be very hard to answer on your
Yes.
own, right? And
Mm.
so there's both that. So then we could talk a little bit about some of the tools that I used during that time that eventually sort of got me out of it. But then there's also this piece of it, I think for a lot of, at least for me, I was one of those people that a lot of doors just opened for. Like
Mm.
my doors opened in front of me. I was successful at a lot of things that I did, and so the next opportunity would arrive for me, and then the next opportunity would arrive for me, and I would just keep walking through these doors. Very
Mhm.
grateful that I had that experience, and I think that that's true for a lot of very successful, ambitious women. But when you're going through the motherhood identity crisis, now it's just a question of what do, and like there's no all doors are open to me. So now which door do I want to go through? That's a much harder question. That's a harder place to get to than the idea that somebody presented me a door and then I walked through it and I took that promotion or I took that step or I took that job, whatever it is, right? It was like one door and I just have to make a decision about one door to walk through. And now through the motherhood identity crisis, it's really like, oh, I've got 20 doors. I could go through all, I
Mm.
don't know. And now which door do I want to go through?
Yeah.
I have no idea. It's very hard to get to an answer, right?
Yes, it is. And not only that, but because now you have the responsibility of a child and
Oh
their
yeah.
future in your hands, and all of a sudden,
Yes.
any decision you're going to make is going to
Has a
impact them,
yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like
100%. I
you're no longer responsible for yourself, but somebody else's life as well.
it's paralyzing for a lot of us. You know, and I was the breadwinner of our family. The idea of making a change had a huge impact on our family. I held the insurance for all three of us. Like the idea that I might choose to not stay on this career path or trajectory, like it was literally paralyzing to me because of the
Mm.
responsibility of having a child and feeling like I am more trapped than I even thought I was because I can only make certain kinds of decisions. I can't take too many I
Yeah.
can't take too many risks on behalf of the
Mm.
family, right?
Yeah.
And so you have all that internal dialogue going on. It's and again why I come back to like this there's an internal crisis moment and there's this
Mm.
feeling of lostness and stuckness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
getting out of this moment is not going to happen, on its own, generally speaking. That's not what I have found. And you can be proactive about getting yourself through this crisis or not. You could be passive about it and just kind of continue life happen and kind of
Mm.
hope that it goes
It will go
away. And it
away.
and it our kids get older, circumstances change, and of course there's an ebb and a flow, and it's possible that the crisis itself will go away. But I have found for a lot of us, if we let a lot of time go by, and this happens for my clients a lot, if they've come to me many, many, many years after this has been going on, and they come to me and they're like, I've been since my kid was born, and they're 10 now, like I've 10 years I've been
Mm.
struggling through this, right? And now they fear all this regret that they have because they weren't making proactive choices, when this
Mm.
crisis for them started. And so regret is one of those things that, for me, I'm like on a mission to make sure that no woman feels regret, whether they choose to like go all into their career or whether they choose to pull back and be a stay-at-home mom and take
Mm.
some time off to be with their kids. I don't want you to regret any decision that you make. I want it to be a really chosen, proactive, intentional decision for your life, whatever it is that you want to do.
I mean, for most women like this is that it is hard. The choice, having to make a choice, like what do I want, is hard enough, and having to make it on your own is even
Yeah.
harder, as you said, because when we're in the picture ourselves, when we're in frame, we can't see the picture, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
It's so hard for us to see our own blind spot and what we can't see. It's
Yeah.
just like fish in water. You ask fish, how is water? It's like, what water? What's going on? I'm
What
already in
water?
the water, isn't it?
No, right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
encourage everyone to get some sort of help, whether it's through a
Absolutely.
coach or family member, whatever it is, just because you cannot solve it on your own. It's
Yeah.
you shouldn't expect you to yourself to. So you said
And you don't
there,
have to. I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, right? I mean,
right?
I'm saying again, I haven't met a woman that hasn't experienced some flavor of this.
Mm,
That's billions of women that exist in the world right now, that have been through this experience. And you don't have to go at it alone. And
mm,
there's a lot of proactive things that you can do to move yourself through this crisis and start answering some of these big questions for you. I I'm always amazed at how, like, what percentage of women come to me saying they're in the middle of this crisis, like they're confused, they're stuck, they're lost, they're thinking maybe I need to pull back in my career, maybe I just want to be a stay-at-home. They're asking all these big questions, right? And they come to
mm,
me, and the majority of them, I'm gonna say like close to 75, 80% of them actually don't change a thing in their life. They
yeah.
remain in their job. They like double down on exactly what they're doing. They don't leave their company, right? All the things that they were questioning, they thought that they needed to do in order to find answers and like be
Mm,
happy again. It isn't actually that. They actually just needed a moment where they had to step back and re-choose the life
mm,
that they were living, re-choose the path that they were on. It feels so much better when you believe that you've chosen the path that you're on
yeah,
than it
yeah.
does to feel like it's sort of just happening to you and you don't have agency over your life.
Yeah, plus there's a lot of pressure from the outside world that now that you're a mother, you must be like this, you must do this, you must do whatever, and there's all the guilt and the shame and the expectation that you put on yourself as well as the
Oh,
society. It
yeah,
just the way as you done, we don't realize how much choice we do have. You mean,
right.
when I coach people, I just say, I have to do this, I have to do. You don't have to do anything. You choose. You're
Yeah.
choosing whatever you're doing
Mm,
right now. You're choosing.
yeah.
And so
Yes.
you can change the choice.
Yeah.
It's as simple
Yep.
as that, isn't it? So it's good.
Proactive choosing. Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. Nobody wants a reactive life. Nobody wants a life
No.
that is happening to them. They want to be in the driver's seat. They want to be deciding
Hmm.
what they want to do, which is circling back to your question earlier, like how did I get myself out of it? And we can kind
Okay.
of segue into talking a little bit about that because what I call it now is I call it your internal compass. It's developing
Hmm.
your internal compass. I think our compass shifts kind of on a fundamental level when we become moms. The goals that we have are not exactly the same anymore. Our priorities are no longer the same anymore. Our time commitments are no longer the same anymore. For some of
Hmm.
us, or even our desires, things that we used to like, we don't like anymore.
That's right.
There's all this like change that
Hmm.
fundamentally has happened. And so there has to be to really be able to move yourself forward, you have to take a step back and redefine for yourself like a
Hmm.
north star or a compass that really defines the
Hmm.
things that are most important to you and who you are and what value you bring and the new goals that you have in your life that encompass the new life that you have, right? So
Yeah.
there's a moment of having to develop that. Now I did that without a coach. And it's why I muddled my way through it. I did it through reading a handful of books. I did it through some small groups that I was a part of. I did it through like mentoring conversations. I did it through a lot of tears. I did it through a lot of journaling. I did it through a lot of prayer. I was
Hmm.
just throwing spaghetti at a wall, just kind of going, I'm not sure how to answer these questions, but I know I need
Hmm.
to answer them somehow.
Yeah.
This was my path forward, right? And it really
Yeah.
was a moment. I can remember it almost like it was yesterday, even though it was so long ago,
Yeah.
that a little light bulb went off inside of me. And something that I read or some question I was answering and journaling about just went, it was like a ding. Oh, I see. Like I see what I'm all about. It was like all
Hmm.
this information like came together for me in this like light bulb moment that ultimately led me down this path of becoming a coach
Hmm.
and kind of recognizing where my strengths lie and what really brought me joy and energy and kind of brought life to me. And then that began to be very clear to me, my path before that or after that at that point.
Yeah. there's a couple of things that came to me when you're talking. You know, when you ask the question to yourself, what do I want? Most people get kind of fight, flight, or freeze
Yeah.
response. I don't know what I want. It's not that they don't know what they want. It's just that they can't admit because it's too scary, too uncertain,
Scary. Yeah,
whatever. And that's why we shy away from getting the help that we need. But you already, what I say to them, you already know what you want. It's just
it's true.
allow that to come through you, like it happened to
Yeah.
you, it happened to me. And then the other thing, now that I forgot the other thing,
And
but it
it's
will
well, the
come.
other thing that gets in the way of that is this idea of getting it wrong, right? I talk
Yes,
about that a
exactly.
lot.
Yeah.
It's like we're talking actually about some big life choices for a lot of
Mm,
people if they're
sure.
considering pulling back in their career, being a stay-at-home mom or changing jobs, or for me it was like I took a completely different career pivot and went back to get certified. It was a whole different
Yeah.
pivot, right? Those are big life choices. There was a lot of financial investment in it. There was risk involved,
Mm,
so that fear of getting it wrong, or in this case, what would be considered like failing ultimately, like making a
mm,
decision, leaving the job, executing on whatever you want to do, and then it not working out in the way that
mm,
you wanted to, you not being happy, you not being balanced, which is what we all, we kind of fear in the
yeah.
end. Like that
Mm,
is very paralyzing to us. And
mm.
and we have to kind of remember that, like, this idea of rightness, like we just get to decide what's right. It's
Yes,
it's a completely subjective idea. We just get to decide.
we get to decide, and we don't need to compare with what we have right now, what we've had so
Right.
far. It's going to look
Yeah.
look different. And yes, I remember now what came to me. The whole
Yeah.
idea of, having to go through these big life-changing experience like having a kid, or then having to decide what else to do with your life. It's almost like
Yeah.
stripping down the layers of all the identities that it's been put onto you. You're a mom, you're a high achiever, you're a manager, you're a VP, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
none of that. You are you as a
You are
full
you.
person that could
Right.
achieve all of that, that could do all of that. So it's like a
Yes.
great experience to strip yourself off of that and just to become who you truly are, isn't it?
Yes. 100%. 100%. And to recognize that whether you choose to stay on this path, whether you decide to remain a VP, or you decide to change jobs, or you decide to do something totally different, or you decide to pull back, whatever it is, like you're still a human being with value, and that
Yeah.
you matter, and that what you are putting out into the world isn't any less. It's just a
Mm.
different decision on how you're going to show up in this world, right? I
Yeah.
I like to separate our value into two buckets. I call it your achievement value,
Mm.
which would be like, we could look at your resume and probably determine what your achieving value is, right? It's everything that we see that you've accomplished in your life, and the successes that you've had, and the ways that you've impacted your companies or your clients or whatever it is. But then there's also another piece of your value, which is your human value. It's the value
Mm.
that you were born with, right? And
Mm.
and that didn't go anywhere. When we
Yeah.
have kids, they're born and they bring an immense amount of joy and love, and we feel life is more valuable because they are in our life, but it's not because they've done anything. They
Yeah.
just exist, right?
Yeah.
And they bring us value because of it. And so we have to get back to this place where we remember that our value is not earned. It
Mm.
is it is it is given to us. It's born within us, right? And we get to choose how we want to put effort into our achievements in life, but more achievements doesn't make us more valuable as human beings, right? And so
No,
we
no.
have to really separate those things and remember that.
Exactly, exactly. And it is a whole learning curve to separate yourself from your achievements and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah,
But
because we've kind of like hardwired that into our brain, right? Like we live in a
absolutely.
world that values, that rewards,
Yeah,
people
rewards.
that are more achievers and successful and do more and accomplish more. Like we reward that, and so our brains learn that, and
Mm.
then yeah, so this untangling or unmarbling process is a
Yeah, yeah.
whole piece of this
Mm.
compass building, and remembering who you are, and putting words to that.
Yeah. And so what are some steps to moving past this moment of identity crisis and regaining the direction and confidence that we naturally have?
Yeah, so we've talked a bit about the need for something proactive, right? And
Yeah.
that's really the best way. You could passively figure this out, but you're kind of just throwing darts at a dartboard and kind of hoping that things magically fix themselves and that you don't
Yeah.
have regrets.
Yeah.
Or you can actually put some effort into it, right? And you could put some time, some investment of energy or even money into
Mm.
figuring this out. And that so it starts with like a recognition that you need support
Yeah.
in answering these big questions for yourself. And a part of answering those questions, one of the things that's going to help you the most is developing a North Star or an internal compass or whatever metaphor we want to use for this on some level.
Yeah.
I call it your compass. And I think that entails a few different things. You know, for my clients, there's 3 exercises that I walk them through, and it's your identity. That's like
Mhm.
who you are and how you show up in the world, like the
Mhm.
value that you put out into the world. It's your values. Those are the things that are most important to you and
Mhm.
kind of the things that you base decisions on.
Yeah.
And then the last one is like your purpose. Like why are you here? Why were you put on this earth? And those are the kinds of core questions, answering
Mhm.
those and having that literally written down on a piece of paper. Like, these are the things that are most
Yeah.
important to me. These are the things, these are my strengths. This is what I put out into the world. This is why I'm here. It shows your brain, right? Like, this is who I am, and not even through the lens of being a mom or being
Mhm.
an employee or a worker or a VP. It's just, this is who I am. And then you
Mhm.
get to like sit in that. For a lot of my clients, they always point back to this work, which I do at the beginning of my coaching with my clients. And they always point back and say that was some of the most valuable work that we did during that time. It was so foundational because they saw themselves in a different way, you know? So getting the support, recognizing that support is going to help you move through this faster, stopping to gain some internal perspective. That requires us stepping back, literally
Mhm.
stepping back from ourselves in some form or another and asking ourselves and starting to answer these big questions for ourselves, whether you're doing that with a coach or you're just doing that with a journal, in a journal prompts of some kind. You know, it's some sort of internal reflection and answering of these questions.
Mhm.
And then ultimately, I think it's about remembering this idea that rightness is subjective and that you just get to decide what
Yeah.
you want for your life, and
Mhm.
and starting to build that level of sort of certainty or confidence that you
Mhm.
deserve this, that you're worthy of the life that you want, that you can
Yeah.
have the life that you want, that you can make decisions for your life, and that you have, full ownership over that, and building that very powerful perspective of who you are as the decision maker of your life.
Yeah, and as we said before, you get to choose this time, and if the choice doesn't work out, you can choose something else. It's not
You can
like the
always
end
choose
of the
something else.
world,
Yep.
you know. We can choose something else. So it's don't need to put so much pressure on yourself. This has to be it from now
Yep.
on, because
Yep.
things will change. You will grow and evolve. People will come into your life, come out of your life, but at least you get to live it. But if you don't take the first step, you'll never know.
Totally.
You'll never know.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first step is inside, and then it gets to be outside, right?
Outside. And the thing is, no matter how many coaches you hire, until you do the inner work, it's not going to change for you. So we
It really
can't do
won't.
the work for you. You get to do the work for yourself.
Yeah.
With our help, that's the thing, isn't it? Is people, even when they come into coaching, they expect to be handheld and taken on, but as much as we do like that, it's not possible. I can't do your work. It's like you don't hire a
I don't know
personal
what's best for your life, right? You know what's best for your life.
exactly. You don't hire a personal trainer and expect them to do the sit-ups for you, do you? So you fool
Nope,
me,
you
right?
sure don't. You sure don't. Nope.
Exactly.
I
So,
love that.
Rebecca, it was wonderful to talk to you today. So, please tell our listeners where they can find you, how can they can reach you.
Yes. So if you are wanting to know more about my coaching, you can just go to my website. That's RebeccaOlsonCoaching.com. But really, one of the best ways to kind of learn what I do, get support as a working mom, is to follow my podcast. So my podcast is Ambitious and Balanced Working Moms. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts, and that's a great place to get some extra support, some strategies, some tips, very practical for everything related to like the intersection of work and motherhood and managing
Hmm.
life.
Excellent. And we'll put all the notes in the show notes, all the links in the show notes, I mean. But thank you so much for talking to us today, Rebecca. It was lovely to speak to you.
It was so lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into another episode of the Finding Serenity in the Midst of Chaos podcast. If you love this episode, please hit the subscribe button and like this video so that more people can listen and hear about it. And also share this podcast with people that you know, because you never know who we can help. So, and we will see you in another podcast episode next week.